What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're going to be looking at a single prize attacking variant, Spiritomb Froslass. So I think Spiritomb has the potential to do a ton of damage and enough damage to be relevant, while Froslass hits for water weakness. We'll talk about both of their uses, but it's a pretty straightforward deck with just the attackers Spiritomb and Froslass, a few support Pokemon, and then a bunch of trainers to try to keep the deck running smoothly. So we'll start with the 4 Spiritomb. 60 HP, building Spite. Once during your turn, you may put 1 damage counter on this Pokemon, and that synergizes well with its attack Anguish Cry for a dark. It does 10 damage base, plus 30 more for each damage counter on the Pokemon. So right off the bat, this Pokemon has a very low HP, and that has its pros and cons. This deck has very poor matchups against all of the Malamar variants because they can spread damage easily and take multiple prizes on our very weak Pokemon. But because of Spiritomb's low HP, it works well with Hustle Belt. So Hustle Belt reads if the Pokemon this card is attached to has 30 HP or less remaining and has any damage counters on it, its attacks do 60 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if Anguish Cry is doing 100, Spiritomb has 3 damage counters on it. With a Hustle Belt, it's doing 160. And its max damage with Anguish Cry plus Hustle Belt is 220 with 5 damage counters on it. And we also have Shrine of Punishment as another kind of damage modification or splash of damage. So 220 with Hustle Belt, also some Shrine of Punishment ticks. Really does a lot of damage for just a single prize Pokemon. And then we have a 2-2 line of Froslass. So Froslass, Spiteful Sigh. For a water energy, put up to 7 damage counters on this Pokemon. This attack does 20 damage for each damage counter you placed in this way. So putting 7 damage counters means you're doing 140 versus a Reshiram Charizard tag team that's 280 damage, and that's a one hit knockout. Versus Blacephalon, you only need to put 5 damage counters, which would do 100 times 2 for weakness. And the same versus Heatran GX, 5 damage counters, which is 100 times 2 for weakness. So if you put 7 damage counters on a full HP Froslass, it goes down to 10 HP. This does not interact with Hustle Belt in the way that you might think it does. But if Froslass starts out at 30 HP or less, and you put however many damage counters on it, even if Froslass gets knocked out by those damage counters, the attack goes through. And if it was starting with 30 HP or less, like Hustle Belt reads, the attack does 60 more damage. So you can also do 200 damage with Spiteful Sigh in that scenario, but you will be knocking out your own Froslass, so you have to see if that's worth it or not. So for support Pokemon, not really a support Pokemon, but Ditto can evolve into either of our stage 2 lines, our stage 1 lines. So Ditto is an auto include, and then our other 2-2 line of stage 1s is Zebstrika. Sprint. Once during your turn, you may discard your hand and draw 4 cards. Pretty simple, but a really aggressive draw engine. It kind of proofs us against the control variants with Chip Ice Axe that try to give you dead cards in your hand and a dead card as your top deck. Sprint can draw through that, and it's also just a very good draw engine to have. Mew prevents all bench damage done to your bench Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. Namely, this kind of secures our Pikarom matchup, and then also stops any other bench damage that could happen to our Pokemon. Like I said, Spiritombs are very low HP, and they are easy to pick off. And then Jynx has the very interesting ability, Ominous Posture. Once during your turn, you move 1 damage counter from one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. So this allows combos like building Spite, 1 damage counter onto your Spiritomb, Rainbow Energy attachment to put another damage counter going up to 2, and then building Spite on a bench Spiritomb, then move that damage counter from the bench to the active with Ominous Posture, putting your Spiritomb up to 3 damage counters for Anguish Cry to do 100 or 160 with a Hustle Belt. And you can do that as early as turn 1 if you have the full combo. So just something pretty cool, and Jynx is also really good to move the Rainbow Energy damage counter off of Froslass, so you can do Spiteful Sigh for 7 damage counters, 140, and not knock out your Froslass. So that's it for the Pokemon. Going down to the trainers, we have 4 Custom Catcher. A lot of times you'll be using these as the play 1 card to draw up to 3 if you have a poor hand, and a small poor hand at that. And you won't really get off 2 gust effects in a lot of games, but even games where you just get off 1 gust effect, it's very useful. So if you don't know, playing 2 Custom Catchers, playing 2 cards at once, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. Since we don't have Guzma or Lysander or Lycanroc GX, we have Custom Catcher and we have Ninetales from Team Up, but we are not running Fire Energy in here. And even if we were running a few, you need an abundant amount with Ninetales. So 4 Custom Catchers is the way to go to have some gust effect potential in the deck. Next we have 4 Pokégear, but I'm going to skip past that for a second and get to that when we go to the supporters. For Pokemon search in items, we have 4 Pokemon Communication, which is put a Pokemon from your hand into your deck and then search your deck for a Pokemon. And we have PokéNav, which is a unique item that doesn't get an extreme amount of play, but it's a really cool card when it does. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you may reveal a Pokemon or energy card you find there, including Special Energy, and put it into your hand. Then put the other cards back on top of your deck in any order. So you can also set up your top deck for next turn with that. Then for stadiums, we have 4. We've got 1 Black Market Prism. When a dark Pokemon that has any dark energy attached to it is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, that player takes 1 fewer prize card. If you can get this to stick with a Spiritomb active and your opponent even misses out on 1 prize card, that's really huge. Then we have 2 Shrine of Punishment. Between turns, put 1 damage counter on each GX and EX in play. You should be familiar with Shrine. It's a very powerful stadium, but at the moment, decks are running a really high count of stadiums, so cards like this don't really get to stay around for too long in play. And then we have a Viridian Forest, just an extra out to finding an energy in case you need it to attack, because this deck is really fragile and you need to attack every turn to get your damage in. The damage output has high potential, but if you're whiffing any attacks, you really don't have a great chance at winning. So Viridian Forest for a little extra consistency of finding your energy. Onto the supporters, we have 4 Professor Elm's Lecture. Search your deck for up to 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less and put them into your hand. As you can see, all of our basic Pokemon, aside from Jynx, have 60 HP or less. So we can find our Spiritombs, our Blitzles, our Mew, our Snorunts, and our Ditto Prism with Professor Elm's Lecture. So it's a really, really great turn 1 and turn 2 supporter. Then we have 4 Cynthia, Shuffle and Draw 6. We have 2 Erika's Hospitality. Since we're using Zebstrika, our hands aren't really going to be huge since we're discarding Draw 4, discarding Draw 4. And Erika's Hospitality you can only play if you have 4 or few other cards in your hand. And so what Erika's does is draw a card for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play, so it might help you find the combo piece you need to make your turn really impactful, like the Custom Catchers or the energy card for turn or the Hustle Belt or the Black Market Prism. And then we have 2 Judges. Again, since we're not going to have amazingly high hand sizes, Judge doesn't hurt us too much, and we're also prioritizing setting up Zebstrika. So each player shuffles their hand into their deck and draws 4 cards. In theory, this should hurt our opponents more than it hurts us, and it also shuffles and gets us some new cards. Lastly, for supporters, we have 1 Brock's Grit. Shuffle 6 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. So we only have 6 attackers in the deck. So if we, let's say 2 or 3 Spiritomb get knocked out, it might be time to Brock's Grit some of those back into the deck so we can get more attackers into play. Lastly, for the trainers is the 4 Hustle Belt that I already mentioned. So we're playing 4 of these because we want our Spiritombs to all have a Hustle Belt on them to do as much damage as possible. Like I said earlier, it reads, if the Pokemon this card is attached to has 30 HP or less remaining and has any damage counters on it, its attacks do 60 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So it really, really bumps up our damage cap here. And then for energy, we have 4 Rainbow. Since we do have 2 different energy requirements in our attackers, and Rainbow also helps bump up Anguish Cry's damage. We have 5 Dark Energy, and then just 1 Water Energy, so it is searchable by Viridian if we need it for Froslass. So that is my Spiritomb Froslass deck list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and try out this deck for yourselves. It's really strong against GX and Tag 2 prize and 3 prize based decks, so GX Pokemon and Tag Team GX Pokemon. It does struggle against other 1 prize variants, especially against Malamar. That's kind of the bane of this deck and most 1 prize attackers' existence. But I do think this has potential. Spiritomb did see some play at Worlds, but didn't do too hot. There was a lot of Malamar there, though, and I do think that could have kind of a weigh in on why Spiritomb didn't do so well. But there are a lot of fire Pokemon that Froslass hits for weakness, so that's also a really good thing about this deck. And so far in games, it feels pretty consistent. Like the Elms is just amazing to set up a couple attackers and a Blitzle and a Ditto. It's just great. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out flipsidegaming.com and use code CELIO for 10% off of your next order, $10 or more. And I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.